Hey, everybody, welcome to Away Games, a Chicago Cubs and baseball podcast, in theory. My name is Adam Amawala. I am one of your hosts. Kevin McCaffrey is your other host. He is unavailable this week. He's traveling about, being funny and doing fun things. So, you guessed it, we have the man, the myth, the legend, Ken Schultz, joining us today. Ken, how you doing, man?
Huzzah! Good to see you, Ed. I'm doing well. It's nice that when you need someone who's the opposite of being funny and doing fun things, I am here for you.
That is not true, but I will say that if I am in need for a little righteous indignation about a topic that I am passionate about and angry about, I can't look any further than Ken Schultz, and I mean this in the nicest possible way.
Uh,
I enjoy seeing you get passionately pissed off at something that deserves to be pissed off about.
I am happy to be your Henry Rollins, I guess. Is that a reference that hits
I'd
anymore?
rather you be my Henry Rowan Gardner. I just want baseball,
Huh?
Ken.
Henry Groen Gardner has grown up to be a dorb, so I'll take that. Yeah. So I guess the best way to start this off is I went to go see our good friend Kevin McCaffrey last night here in Chicago at the Lincoln Lodge, crush a stand-up set. And once we exchanged hugs and pleasantries, he asked how I was doing. And quite literally, the first thing I talked about was, yeah, so when Manfred canceled games last week, I sat down on my bed and cried. So yeah, let's start with that.
Well, let's start with this. I don't want to pry. I don't know if you're currently going to therapy. We all should be, but if you are, what percentage of your hour every week is about the lockout?
Um, Considering that there were at least two full sessions last year specifically dedicated to Jed Hoyer and the Cubs, I've tried to keep it in check so far and handle the other parts of my crazy a little bit with therapy this year. But I mean, I we did talk last time my therapist and I, the discussion was, yeah, I'm still crushed by the fact that there's no baseball. And meanwhile, Russia's trying to start World War III. Is this a bad thing?
I think objectively both are bad things. One is worse than the other. One sadly affects us more than the other, but that's not the point.
And
For
that's what he
all,
said
yeah,
too. Yeah, he
exactly,
was like,
exactly.
baseball more directly affects you. And I was like, yeah, it kind of does. And I feel
It's
kind of
just the
shitty about
reality
that.
of the situation. I mean, you
Yeah.
don't have to feel bad about it. It is what it is. For all things hot takes, follow us at Away Games Pod on Twitter and Instagram, and
And
follow
my
Ken
therapist.
at yeah. Also follow Ken's therapist. Is it still Ken Schultz underscore on Twitter? Do I have that
Yes, it
right?
is.
Okay.
Yep. Ken Schultz
Um,
underscore Twitter, Ken Thin Guy Instagram.
Hell yeah. All right, so let's start with this, right? We are recording this on Wednesday morning, March 9th. I think I have that right. There is no deal. There was a lot of talk on Twitter last night about, much like the week before, is something going to get done? It does seem like things are closer. It does seem like the owners have budged a bit. I don't know the degree to which that has happened. I've been reading up on it this morning. What are your impressions based on what you've seen last night and this morning?
At this point, I'm hoping it's safe to say there is going to be a season at some point in 2022.
Hmm.
As to when that season is going to start, I don't think we can make a call yet.
Yeah.
It feels two things. It feels like last Tuesday, when we got the same kind of breathless, oh my God, there's actual movement being made in negotiations, optimism being spread by Bob Nightingale and Heyman and those guys like that. And then we woke up the next morning and nothing at all. And it also feels a bit like that little period after election night in 2020 when all of us were watching MSNBC going, just fucking call Pennsylvania already. And they wouldn't do it for 3 days. And it
Right.
feels like we keep waking up. And I guess the competitive balance tax going up to a reasonable threshold is the equivalent of Pennsylvania at this point to really punish that metaphor into the ground as much as we
I just can't wait to see Van Jones crying tears of joy over the end of the lockout.
can. Today is the day that Rob Manfred finally became commissioner.
I can tell my kids today that I'm proud to be a baseball fan.
Yeah, so I guess that little bit of movement is cause for optimism, but I'm not going to buy into anything more than that until I see it at this point, that there are still so many quantity wise, so many areas where the sides are still apart and still need to make moves, that it feels like a bit of a stretch to say that there's going to be one specific offer today that's going to satisfy everyone in in one moment. So we might
Right.
be due for another week of
Yeah.
this.
And to that end, I mean, looking at some of the stats and figures here in terms of how far apart the sides are, as of the latest figures, I'm referencing a CBS Sports article here. One of the biggest things is the competitive balance tax threshold. In 2021, it was 210 million. The MLB proposal is they're going for 230 million in this season, rising to 242 million by 2026. So they're getting closer. The MLBPA proposal
Yeah.
is
My hope
still
is that,
238 and 263. I mean, it's like they're inching closer. I don't know how much of this is like legal gamesmanship and chess at this point, and just both sides not wanting to give up too much. But I still think the owners are the assholes here.
oh yeah, yeah. And my hope is that the fact that the owners are finally moving noticeably on the competitive balance tax, and we really should just be calling it the luxury tax. I think I introduced that, and that's my bad.
Right.
But the fact that they are moving on the luxury tax, I'm hoping is an indication that this is their signal to the union that, okay, we're now ready to actually bargain with you because we kind of want the season to start soon.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, then I hope the union holds them to the fire and says, okay, now if you're giving us a bit of power, what are you going to give us to agree to this? Because the union has been the only one that's been giving up until yesterday. And there was a moment last week, I briefly turned on MLB Network, which is my bad because it is unfucking watchable right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's like what would happen if Christopher Mad Dog Russo was now 24/7 on that network in terms of management lickspittlery. But there was a moment, I think it was Joel Sherman, who was on MLB Tonight, trying to push the points where both sides think that they made major concessions. The key phrase being "think that they made," and he rattled off the players have conceded on earlier free agency, on more Super Twos, and I think it was on a level of the arbitration bonus pool. And his example of the owners conceding was the owners have not introduced a salary cap. And really, like that's what you're trying to push in terms of a reasonable move. The owners have not tried to push things back to 1994. We're not going back to the days where Lightning Crashes is about to be released and we're singing along to Jeremy and wearing flannels and giant pants. Like the salary cap has not been a part of the negotiations for almost 30 years. It's as Chris Rock once said, you want a cookie?
Yes, that I think it's one of those things that's like brought up just for the sake of being brought up that doesn't really have any relevance in the current negotiations. I'm trying to be optimistic because it does seem like there are other I guess chips that are much closer. Like for example, minimum salary. Last year, the minimum salary in baseball was 570,000. At the very least, based on what MLB is proposing, it's going to be 700,000, if not more. The MLB proposal is 700,000, increasing to 770,000 in 2026. MLBPA wants to start at 725. So, like when things are that close, it really is just splitting hairs at this point. And I think a lot of people waving their dicks around and vaginas around. I hope there are women involved in this negotiation. I wouldn't be surprised if there weren't because it's baseball and antiquated and stupid in so many ways. But point being, I do think that some of it is just posturing.
You think we can come to a deal with a skirt in the room, Adam?
Jesus, there are plenty of people who probably feel that way.
And half of them own baseball teams, at least. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like honestly, waving your dick around sounds like Rob Manfred's chief negotiating position for 90 days of this particular lockout, I think. And I would caution you in terms of the optimism there that yes, it's good to see that they are so close in areas like the minimum salary, but also the pattern of this negotiation has been that every movement, especially from the management side, has come attached with a consideration. And specifically, they've apparently agreed right now that there should be no, I think it's no draft pick compensation when
Mm-hmm.
a team signs another player who has a qualifying offer attached. But in order for management to agree to that, they want the players to agree to an international draft.
Right.
And almost every Latinx player in big league baseball right now is dead set against that. And for very understandable
Hmm.
reasons, because that's one of their few points of leverage when they're negotiating, when they don't have anything else on their side, when they're trying to sign with a big league team. And that would provide, ownership, a way to control the costs when they try to sign the next Vlad Guerrero Jr., for example. Um, so yes, it's good that it sounds like they're close, but I would be a little bit hesitant just because sometimes management likes to leak that they're close because they've attached a poison pill like that to it that the union is going to have a much bigger
And
problem
that's
with.
exactly what happened last week during
Right,
that final deadline. It seems fairly obvious now that
right.
a lot of that narrative was just the MLB feeding stuff to reporters, a lot of whom seem to be shills.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, we figured out who the biggest management suck ups are at this point.
Right.
Heyman was obvious, and Nightingale was obvious. Uh, it's actually kind of a revelation right now to see, okay, which of the guys we follow are the ones who actually aren't currying favor at every opportunity to get access to sources. Like Jeff Passan has been a shining
Hmm.
star of this particular lockout and the coverage of it. That he's been one of the most reasonable. Evan Drellick has been great. So it's really kind of like the lockout is helping curate my Twitter feed a little bit this way.
Yeah. I assume you have an itchy block finger, or at least an itchy unfollow/mute finger for information that you don't want to see, because it is clearly just at the very least just bad journalism. I mean, your job as a journalist, while it has certainly shifted over the years in all facets of life, is supposed to be being objective and presenting facts, and there seems to be not so much of that. Before we get into more lockout stuff, I do have some good news for you, Ken.
Oh, good
Guess
heavens,
what?
yes.
We have a new sponsor on today's episode. It's
Oh
very
my
exciting.
God.
I know, and this is specifically for people in Illinois, of which you are one. Here's the deal: DraftKings at Casino Queen Sportsbook is officially live with mobile sports betting right here. When I say here, I mean there in the Lincoln State. So to celebrate Illinois going mobile, new customers can bet just $5 on any team of their choice and get $200 in free bets instantly. So, once again, download the DraftKings at Casino Queen Sportsbook app now. Use promo code AWAYGAMES. I'm sure you never could have guessed that. Bet just $5 on any team of your choice and get $200 in free bets instantly. It's that simple. Just use promo code AWAYGAMES this week at DraftKings at Casino Queen Sportsbook. 21 over only, Illinois only. Eligibility restrictions apply. Ooh, you know what? Let me say that part fast. That's always fun. 21 plus only, Illinois only. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. That's pretty good.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
was
well
pretty good.
done.
And I will
Near
tell
micro
you,
machine developer.
I have dabbled a bit in the sports betting world. I have specifically used DraftKings, and this is not even part of the ad read. Of the sports betting apps I have dabbled with, DraftKings far and away the best customer service. I wouldn't say it if it
I
weren't true. I am not a corporate shill. I have emailed them about a couple things. I get a response. You know when you like take a sip of water at a restaurant and the waiter's already filling it? That's what DraftKings is like responding to things. It's quite refreshing because usually you have to harass people on Twitter to get a response. DraftKings seemingly has a bunch of people working who respond to you instantaneously, and I'm a big fan of that.
DraftKings, it goes easily down your throat. Wait, no. Oh, Jesus.
Wait. No, that's Manscaped. That's a different one.
And
Anyway,
I
let's get back to the
can I
lockout.
just
What were you
point
gonna say?
out that
Yes,
if
please.
anyone had logged on to DraftKings at that point and bet, say, $100 that somebody would refer to Illinois as the Lincoln State, it would have been the first time you'd have won money. So well done there. The Lincoln State, Adam Mamawala.
Land of Lincoln.
Yes. How long has it been since you visited our ancestral
I
home
didn't
here?
say that. That was part of the ad read. You got a bone to
Oh,
pick with
really?
DraftKings. Yeah.
The Lincoln State DraftKings? You've opened up a sports book here. Have you read an Illinois license plates? Have
Ken,
you
stop
looked
heckling our sponsor.
at
Oh my God, it's snowing outside. I'm in New York. This is a nightmare. What's happening?
Wowzers? It's a
Unbelievable.
sign from
It
above.
was 70 degrees 2 days ago. I hate this time of year. But you know what? I wish I were watching a tarp get pulled over a field. Not that that would happen
Yes.
anyway. It is March, and there are no tarps in Arizona. Let's get back to the important news of the day. So again, you brought up the qualifying offer system. You brought up how that's tied to the international draft. Um, here's some. Let's lighten it up a little bit. What are your opinions on two things? Right. First, this is a big one. As of right now, it seems more likely that the 14 team playoff is probably not going to happen, at least for the time being, and we're looking at a 12 game playoff. So I want your thoughts on that, and also bigger bases. Do you have any opinions whatsoever on this proposal to increase the bases and shifting? Holy shit, we got to talk about a lot of stuff. All right, let's start with playoffs. How are you feeling about a 12 team playoff versus 14 versus what we have now?
I mean, it's like a slap in the face as opposed to a kick in the nuts. So I
Right.
guess I'll take it. I I think a 10-team playoff is too many, and the sweet spot for me was still the 8. Like,
Mhm.
I remember actively thinking that it was wrecking baseball when C League added the 3 divisions and the 1 wild card to the playoffs, and that's the one move he made where I was wrong, he was right, and I'm willing to concede that.
Mhm.
But honestly, even though the Cubs benefited in 2015 from the 2 wild cards, I really would love to just go back to the 4 teams, because that seems like the the real sweet spot between only elite teams for the most part, and the 2006 Cardinals make the playoffs in that instance.
Mhm.
And it's still hard, uh, but you also keep interest going for the majority of the sport, or you should, in a world where most owners are competing. Um, I'm glad that we're not going to go to 14. But that's honestly the best I can give you at this point.
Mhm.
It feels like that everybody who's trying to push it, all the management shills on Twitter and on MLB Network, you can almost see the flop sweat in terms of how they're pretending to be so excited about the idea that an 84 win team could join the postseason with 100 win teams like the Dodgers and the Giants. And I'm glad that it's going to be a little bit harder, but it still feels like we're moving far too much in the direction of the NBA and the NHL. And it's part of it is that, yeah, I'm old, and I came of age as a baseball fan in the era where there were just the 2 divisions in each league. So you had 4 teams making the playoffs, and you had to be a first place team to get to the postseason. And when I kind of first became aware of like how all the sports did it, that was kind of a point of pride. Like in baseball, in order to make the playoffs, you have to be one of the best.
Mhm.
And the idea that you can have a team that's hovering around 500 or maybe even below, honestly, either I could see with either a 6 or a 7 team, that that sickens me. And I really don't want to see that. There's nothing exciting about it. There's certainly the idea of adding the reality show component of the teams choose their opposition, choose the team they want to play, and that's
Yeah.
such gimmicky bullshit. That's are you going to have Juan Soto and Bryce Harper lip sync for their lives in order to get past the first round?
Right.
Is
I
that the
mean,
thing?
what the problem with that is like that's some shit that you should do for an all-star game. Like in the way that the NBA has like the top 2 vote getters draft their teams. So it's LeBron and Kevin Durant get to draft their teams and they do it on TNT and it's a good fun jovial time. Sure. I would love to see MLB do something like that for the All-Star game.
Right.
But we don't need gimmicks in the playoffs. I will say that the only thing I want to be clear that I hate the 1 game playoff. I think it's
Yes.
an absolute abomination to spend however many months playing 180 games, including spring training, and then you have one bad outing and your season's done. I think that's ridiculous.
Yes.
I've always thought that the 5 game first round was too short. I think that too much can go wrong in that series. But I do like the fact, and it certainly benefited the Cubs in 2016, that there's an extra incentive and reward for being the best team. Like
Hmm.
the one thing about the old way of doing things, which we're never going to go back to, clearly, of 4 teams in each league, was that it really didn't give that much benefit to anyone. Like you could win 110 games or be the 2001 Mariners and still get bounced pretty easily. And the Cubs were the beneficiaries of that. I mean, in 2003, the Cubs were not a great regular season team. They won 88 games, but they still knocked the Braves out and almost knocked the Marlins out. So I do like the idea of giving some sort of reward to the better team. If while I guess you could argue that this is gimmicky, but like if there is some sort of scenario where there are worse teams making the playoffs in bigger numbers, I would like to at least see some sort of thing where, like, I don't know, you play a three game series, and if you're the higher seed, you only have to win two of the three. But if you're the bottom seed, you have to sweep the series. Like something that makes it more clear that you're getting a reward for having been better throughout the course of the season. Because if if we're just playing these little one game or best of three series, why the hell are we playing 162 games? Like if I'm a player, why am I going to bust my ass to not even get that much more of an advantage in the playoffs? And then that has a trickle down effect of just kind of tarnishing everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the players are on the side of the idea of what you just proposed in terms of the higher seeded team having to win two of three and the lower seeded team having to sweep it. And I believe the owners don't go for it because they don't want any scenario that means there will be less postseason games and less postseason money for them. But yeah, your logic is certainly sound in that. And in terms of the 162 game season, the thing that really kind of underline that really irks me is that so many years it feels like baseball is almost ashamed of the things that make it special and make it unique in the sporting landscape. And one of those is the 162 games and the grind of the everyday season for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
It's an epic novel of a sports season, and there's nothing comparable in any other major sport to it. And every move it's made, pretty much since Bud Selig has been in charge, has been trying to figure out a way, can we make this more like the NBA? And can we make this more like the NFL? Because we were being told by ESPN that those are the cool sports, and,
Mm-hmm.
and baseball is, you know, losing fans at a rapid pace, even though we get more and more postseason money with every television contract. For some reason, those two ideas can exist in the same world. And honestly, I wish we lived in an era where baseball celebrated the things that made it baseball. It's whether it's, the idea that an extra inning game could go 16 innings, or you could use every player on the bench in one game, or it's as 162 game long season.
Mm-hmm.
That's the things that make it special for me to follow the sports. And or like I mentioned before, the only the best teams make the postseason. Um,
Right.
and every move we make to get away from that feels like just another way of baseball saying, desperately trying to reach out to demographics that only would marginally care about it, in at the expense of saying, okay, we're going to make ourselves less special.
Well, here's the thing, right? So while I agree with you for the most part, I do understand why it's concerning to the people in charge of Major League Baseball that the demographics indicate that it's a sport that's not cool. It's like largely a sport that's popular with, I don't know, white men in their 50s, which is not really the hot demographic that you're trying to appeal to. Um, my issue is that the things that MLB tries to do to appeal to a younger audience are not the things they should be doing. You don't need to be instituting a pitch clock or adding extra playoff teams to appeal to a 14-year-old. You need to be marketing your players and making games fucking watchable for people. Like the the idea that they think that what they're proposing is helping baseball and helping cultivate a younger fan base while simultaneously making two games exclusive to Apple TV once a week is ludicrous. Like I saw, I mean, it's not everything in life should be measured by social media, but I saw I don't know if you saw this post that LeBron James, just the human being LeBron James, has more Instagram followers than every single player in Major League Baseball combined.
Jesus Christ. Wow.
And that says something. I mean, you look at even Mike Trout or the best players in the game, and yeah, they have a couple of million followers, but there are dudes who are on like 10-day G League contracts in the NBA that have a bigger social media following. And it does matter. It matters in comedy. It matters in sports. It matters in everything right now. Like that is a real metric of how much people care about something. And I just think that if baseball wants to appeal to younger fans, which they should, um, they're approaching it the wrong way. The things they're trying to institute are not going to be the things that bring someone in who was apathetic before.
Yeah, and I am, admittedly an old arguing on behalf of my position here, and arguing it's a concept of appealing to young fans. So I mean, in many instances, I have no idea how to do that, as my entire career demonstrates. Um, it does feel, to your point, like every time baseball does reach out to a younger demographic, that it's almost like adding Poochie to their cast, which again is a 25-year-old reference about how hard it is to reach out to young people. So there is that. But that this is also, an issue that's been going on since I was in high school. Like, I remember easily growing up in Chicago in the mid 90s and hearing how uncool baseball was back in the era of Sandberg and early Sosa, compared to, obviously the Bulls of Michael Jordan, where the
Mhm.
storyline was, oh, here comes the NBA, they're going to take it over, baseball is going to be irrelevant.
Right.
And yet 30 years later, here we are. Game's still there, people are still watching, we're still going. And I almost wonder if that might be just kind of a natural progression of sports fandom, that you reach a certain age and you kind of start getting baseball more. I don't know. I have no data at all to back this up, but it just feels like the narrative that we have now of baseball having difficulty marketing its stars to young fans and reaching out to young fans. Yes, it is a real thing. And yes, it should do everything in its power to change that. But that's also the narrative of 30 years ago. And it hasn't killed the sport yet.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I guess the question is, will in 30 years will there be enough 55-year-olds who are really into baseball to replace the ones who are currently there now? And maybe there are. I mean, you go to any baseball game and you still see plenty of kids there who are incredibly excited to be there and enamored with the sport and love baseball. I think perhaps those demographics have shifted. But yeah, I think I would agree with you.
There is one thing that I think, to every point you're making, very much needs to change in terms of how baseball markets itself as a sport. And that is, we need to stop accepting the talking point that's been going around for at least the past 5 or 6 years, that the NFL and the NBA are national sports and baseball is local in appeal. And you and I are both deep enough fans of the game to know that there is no reason on earth that that should be acceptable.
Mhm.
That I can't imagine, like, it's inconceivable to be not being fascinated by, the Juan Sotos or the Joey Vottos or the Harpers or the Trouts of the world. And the fact that so much of the baseball establishment has just accepted that Mike Trout is only going to be popular in Anaheim, or Juan Soto is only going to be popular in DC. So let's not even try to push their appeal beyond that, because that leads to greater player power and a more powerful union down the road and all that. That's the most sickening part to me of all this, is that baseball is just kind of thrown up its hands and gone, well, okay, I guess we just appeal to the fans in our television market,
Mhm.
and then the rest of the game can kind of just do whatever it wants to do with its own markets. There is no coordinated effort to make it a national sport the way the NFL and the NBA are. And if you want to go about fixing this problem, that's the first thing that needs to change in my mind, is that mentality. And we need to snap out of this idea that it should only appeal to the people who live around the ballpark, and it shouldn't appeal to people across the country with superstars at that level.
Right, I totally agree, and I think it's almost become like a running joke at this point that if you go to the Sports Center Instagram, the last post about baseball will be like, "Hey, the Braves won the World Series." Like they just don't care, and you can only control that so much. But if I'm Major League Baseball, I'm just going to whoever runs the NBA's social media accounts and being like, "Hey, do us now. What?
Mm-hmm.
How much
Yeah,
money do you want? Do this with us." Because it is true that MLB seems to be a much more team driven than athlete driven sport. Like in the way that there are LeBron fans who are going to be fans of wherever he plays, whether it's Miami or Cleveland or Los Angeles. I don't get the impression that there were a lot of people who were like, I'm just a Mookie Betts guy and now I'm a Dodgers fan. You just
yeah.
don't see it as much. So it's been that way for so long. I mean, I remember times where you would post a cell phone video of something that happened at a game and you'd go on YouTube again and MLB would have pulled the clip like that. You can't be that short sighted. And that's something that the NBA has done expertly. And I think their popularity in the world is really due to marketing. I mean, Michael Jordan is Michael Jordan, and obviously that was going to expand the game. But um, I mean, it is a masterclass on how to market a sport when you look at the NBA social media. And I wish MLB would be better at that. And this is also coming directly from the players. I don't know if you ever listen to the Compound anymore, or anything you
Oh,
hear players talk about. They're like, please, we're like, help us. We can only do so much. Like market the game, market the players.
right, right. And the first thing the NBA social media team would tell MLB if they went to them in your hypothetical scenario is, okay, let people share your shit.
Yeah.
That's that it's a very basic thing, but MLB has not gotten that for years and years. And I to kind of tie this entire discussion together from what we were talking about at the beginning of the pod, part of me always kind of worries that as long because baseball has the strongest union in the game, that's good for the players in so many aspects, but that also means that we'll never get the owners on board with marketing them the way they do in the NBA and
Yeah,
the
because why
NFL.
give them more power?
Right, right, because that comes around in the next negotiation. More
Yep.
that generates more money for the league. The players know about that, and they start asking for more in the next round of collective bargaining. And it's sickening to think of it like
Hmm.
that. But I wouldn't be surprised if that's one of the driving forces why MLB is always so hesitant to agree to the players saying, "Yeah, give us some help here."
Right. Well, and even if they could just fix something as simple as getting rid of blackouts, I feel like that would put so many people's concerns at bay. Like it's always brought up that there's like a part of Iowa where there are 7 teams that you can't watch, which is ridiculous. And seemingly MLB's answer to that is like, well, we hear you, but what if we kept those same restrictions, but now also you can only watch 2 games a week if you have Apple. Like, what are we gonna be streaming games on Quibi in 8-minute chunks? Like, what? It just seems so wildly out of touch that it's very frustrating. But not to get caught
Iowa
up
Cubs
too
that
much on
chopped
that.
liver.
Oh my gosh. I'd love to go to an Iowa Cubs game. I
Great.
tell you what, depending on how long this continues, I am certainly going to seek out a minor league game or two. I still love baseball.
Yeah, I'm going to do a baseball trip this summer, and it's a question of whether or not the lockout is over, whether I do a major league one. I'm planning to go to Texas or Houston,
Hmm.
or I have a minor league backup in mind that's going from Salt Lake City through Missoula, Montana to Spokane, Washington. So
Nice. I love
yeah,
this.
I big
And
Sam.
I hope you take a bus just in honor of the minor league experience.
Honestly, considering we're both comics, that seems the most economical way to do it at this point. So greyhound it up.
Love it.
Absolutely.
Love it. Before we get going here, real quick lightning round. Give me your thoughts on larger bases and shifts being banned.
Larger bases. I like big bases, and I cannot lie. I feel bad that that's the first thing that comes to mind, but there's nothing else in my brain other than that terrible lyric. So uh, we'll delete this in post
I have
later.
enjoyed the Ricky Henderson meme of him holding up a base that's like his body size.
That's awesome. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
it's great.
whoever did that is well done there. And in terms of the shift, I'm an old Teddy ball game guy. So the shift should have been banned in 1946. And I want to make the point too that we kind of discussed this in our Facebook thread, that as soon as they make it public that the shift is getting altered or banned in some way, 10 seconds later, the Cubs need to bring back Anthony Rizzo.
Hmm.
Because one of the talking points from people like stat heads like Joe Sheehan is it's not going to affect the game too much because the shift only punishes power hitters who strike out a lot. And hey, you know who a left-handed power hitter who doesn't strike out a lot is? There's one out there, and he could probably benefit from some ball and play luck for the past couple of years.
Absolutely, he could. I will tell you, I will miss him choking up and just smacking a ball down the third baseline. That was always very
Yeah.
satisfying.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, he could still do that with two strikes. That's part of his thing. But imagine that. Plus, now you have like actual holes to hit through on the right side of the
Hmm.
field, or line drives will occasionally start falling in, and when you hit them, halfway between the infield and the right fielder. Like,
Yeah, that is one thing that has always been like my biggest beef with the shift is always that it just confuses my brain and makes baseball more difficult to watch because you get growing up when we did and you're a bit older than me, but like you get so used to how like when you see the ball coming off the bat, you just know if it's a hit or not, and
mhm,
that is not the case anymore.
yeah,
Um, Even, I mean, I think probably the most dramatic example of this is that Dexter Fowler single up the middle in the World Series that, like, off the bat, you knew it was in center field. And then Lindor is right there behind the second base bag, and it's an out. Also, that was just a good play. But point being, like, it is, it's just frustrating in terms of like what deserves to be a hit and what doesn't. When you
Yes.
hit a screamer into the what should be an open area between the second baseman and right fielder, and it's caught as a line drive, it's just like this doesn't. It just doesn't feel in the spirit of the game.
Yeah, it feels like once you have that sharply hit ball up the middle, it feels like, okay, you've earned a single at this point.
Right.
And to be fair, you can still defense that in a limited shift if you have good up the middle guys. Like it's still conceivable to have guys cut that off if you position them well enough and have good enough range.
Right.
But
Don't hit it
yeah,
up the middle in Detroit, baby. Javi's getting it.
oh my goodness, like nobody's getting the ball up the middle there. Oh
Yeah.
God, Detroit doesn't know how lucky it has it for the next 6 years. And
Go Tigers.
uh, and it's I also kind of hope it brings back just a little bit the idea of the ground ball single. Like I know that's not the most exciting play, but I do kind of miss those every now and again.
Hmm.
It's nice to kind of have those mixed in. And to be
Seeing eye
fair,
single, as they used to call it.
yeah, yes, and to have guys whose specialty was the way to kind of slap it through the infield, the Rod Carews and the Tony Gwynns of the world, the Wade
Hmm.
Boggses, guys like that. And I know it's exponentially much harder to do now given the velocity throughout the entire game. It's directing the ball from a 98-mile-an-hour fastball. There's only so much you can do. I get that, but I have to think that if you give the opportunity by having bigger holes in the infield, that you might start seeing a few more of those guys, and more variety makes for a more interesting game to me.
I agree. I completely agree. Ken, you got anything else before we wrap this thing up?
So the last piece in my worst Cubs losses I've ever attended series,
Oh
I'm
no.
just about finishing up. You know exactly which game I'm talking about, Adam Mamawala.
Oh
Would you care to
boy.
guess how many words I've spilled on Game 6 of the 2003 NLCS?
I mean, I don't even. I have to assume a Dickensian. I get paid by the word level of words.
Yes, the current draft is at 2,400. So got to edit that a little bit, but I'll be submitting that later this week. It's going to be up on Cubs Insider, probably either late this week or early next.
Man,
Enjoy my pain. It's fun.
really, really an exercise in masochism to be undertaking this during a lockout. I have to tell you.
It as Rob Manfred canceled the first two series of the season last week, I thought, maybe not the best week to write about the eighth inning of Game 6. I think I'm going to
Ugh.
push that off a little bit, like the players and owners have done with negotiation. Hey, how about that to tie it together?
I mean, I liked the start of the eighth inning.
Yeah, that
That
first
was
batter.
fun.
Yeah, it's when Mike Mordecai bats twice, it's never a good thing, apparently.
That needs to be the title of a very niche book. Ken, thank you so much for filling in for Kevin here. Once again, follow Ken at Ken Schultz _ on Twitter, at Ken Thin Guy on Instagram. You know where to find me, Adam Mamawala on all things social, Kevin McCaff on his social medias, at Away Games Pod. Kevin's bouncing around the country doing shows. Look him up on his website. I'll be in Nashville and Colorado in late April, early May. Hopefully there will be baseball. Maybe I'll go see a minor league game in Nashville. I believe there's a AAA team there. So
The sounds, yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
there you go. Anyway, that's it for us. Make sure to go to DraftKings, use promo code AWAYGAMES, deposit $5, get a free $200 in bets, and that's it for us. See you next week.
Hey, joy to talk to you, my friend.